welcome to Horror Movies and Beyond. I'm your host, Ivotres Littles, and this is Shudderary, where we go behind the screens of Shudder Original and exclusive movies. Today, I have two amazing guests, Vanessa and Joseph Winter, who directed and wrote Shudder Original Movie, Deadstream. How are you guys doing today?
Good. We're good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're
by
welcome.
Ourselves versus like having to raise a bunch of money for. And so that brought us to the found footage genre, but then the other influences like Evil Dead 2 and other things that we were really excited about is kind of what propelled it into the story that it became.
Joseph, you must have a great singing voice because you scream throughout the entire film.
Thank you.
He does.
I do not, but
you have seen him.
as soon as when it first opens up, you meet your character and automatically you kind of like, ugh, like he's so like you don't really like him because he seems so fake. And there were even little elements that you could tell what kind of person this guy is, especially when his mom made him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something. And it's like, you're a douchebag, love mom. I mean, it was just like stuff like that. I was like, okay, this is funny. But I could tell that you guys were making fun of how influencers do something terrible, but then try to make an apology that even goes horribly wrong. Like nothing worked for this guy. So going in this haunted house, was that a real life haunted house? Like, was that a house that you guys like just come across or? Oh, it was.
Yeah, it's a house that has a local legend to it about these two brothers that died. There's all kinds of lore around it and people genuinely believe that it's haunted. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. The only difference between what you see in the movie outside, like the exterior of the house, and what you see in real life is, in real life, if you drive up to the house, it's in the middle of nowhere in fields. It just so happened that the back of the house had a thick cluster of trees. So we were able to shoot through it at night and make it look like it was in a forest and then match that to an actual forest a few miles away. As far as the apology video goes, we were researching influencers and really deep diving into it and the controversies. And every time we would watch an apology video, it would seem that always, without fail, they would end up digging themselves deeper by maybe talking a little bit too much or whatever. And you'd realize that they think the next day and facing all this backlash that they've changed. And they're trying to tell you that they're a different person now. But they clearly aren't, and they're still saying things that are offensive in their apology, not really realizing it. So we thought that would be really fun to play off of a person who's not really changed, but is trying really hard with appearances to seem like it. And especially when he tries his sincere apology toward the end, we wanted to make sure that it was still really clear that he hasn't really changed, even though his intentions may be right.
Yeah, I think I really wanted to create that feeling of like, when we were doing research, I would get pretty surprisingly wrapped up into influencers' lives and kind of like the train wreck that might be happening. And I would find myself rooting for them in like a small way and being like, oh, this apology, like I want to believe it. Like I want them to be able to apologize and move on. And then by the end of the apology, I was like, Oh, no. This is going badly.
Yeah, believe me, I've seen plenty of those apologies videos, and you're just like, cringeworthy. But there were some other things I also noticed. So both of you guys directed it and wrote it. So I'm curious of how that process went, because it seemed like, Joseph, the things that you saw or we saw through your perspective, like it seemed your reaction was real. So I'm wondering the parts where Vanessa, where you wrote, he didn't know exactly how it was going to happen when you were like directing it, or the part where we don't see him, or however it goes. I don't know how you guys did the process, but he knew obviously that something was going to happen. but did he know exactly what was going to happen? Like something sliding across the bed, him running away. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
that's actually
totally.
a huge compliment that you think that there was like real surprise involved. So thank you.
Yeah, we kind of wanted, I think in the back of our minds, we thought a little bit that it could be kind of improv and like capture some real stuff.
More loose.
Yeah, but then once we got into it and got rehearsing, we realized it just all had to be super calculated. So we kind of timed all the shots. We really had to try hard to make it look like that. So
Really?
that I guess goes to your acting.
No,
I know, because
Yeah.
could have fooled
what
me.
she was saying is like it became a really precise thing that we had to execute. In the rehearsal, we were using sometimes my iPhone, sometimes we were using the real gear, but during the day. And it just became really clear that like we can't just kind of loosely say, let's see what happens. We have to be precise. Vanessa had a stopwatch that she was timing. Like every time we call action, it was a stopwatch of like, you have to cover this much ground in 23 seconds. It was super precise. And so some of the authenticity that you're talking about wasn't necessarily there when we filmed it. Through ADR and through re-edits and test screenings, we were able to make it feel more authentic. We actually, a lot of the screams that you hear now, I know some people really love them, some people really hate them, but when we first started testing it, all of my screams were a falsetto, like really obnoxious falsetto scream. And it didn't feel like there was real danger. It felt like it was just supposed to be funny. And that was really bothering people. So we went through and replaced my voice on most of the screams with just like terror screams. So I think it's the combination of re-editing and ADR and testing that made it feel more authentic.
Yeah. Turns out you have to really try hard to make something seem natural and off the cuff, and it does just happen.
See, that's a secret you should have kept for yourself. You're just like, yeah, she did. Yeah, I didn't know nothing. I was just there. Showed
way
up
more
on my
interesting
parts.
story.
Yeah. Oh wow. I know filmmaking, you know, it has to be very precise, but it does not come across. It seems so natural. That's why I assume, like, even though you were both writing and you both read what was going to happen, but maybe he didn't know exactly what was going to happen. So when you were acting it out, you know, you just did it and his reaction was real. But either way, it was still real because it got me. It definitely did. I mean, there were some really scary parts. I mean, and they were very subtle. Even when you was outside, when you threw away the bullets and you got to look for them and you see this thing in the bushes, like right there, and then you take off running. I mean, it was just like the sheriff outside. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, it really showed that you were terrified. I mean, what acting school did you take? Because did you take any acting classes, or that's just your natural?
This is really nice. All these things that you're saying. Please keep saying them. So the thing about the acting is when I went into film, I was interested in being in the stuff I was making. As I started to make more student films, I started to become less interested because they were very difficult to do, both sides of the camera. With Vanessa in the picture and us joining forces, it seemed like it would be a more viable option again for me to be in front of the camera. And it was definitely a reason that I even could do it, because I could stop thinking about certain parts of the production while she just took them over completely. But the reality is I actually was very underqualified for this role. And I think what's cool and what I appreciate about you saying that is that we were able to, I consider it like we were able to trick people into thinking we made a better movie than we did in some of the reshoots that we did, some of the ADR and the test screenings, going back being like, this was not real in this moment. People didn't buy this part and we went and shot it. If I were just an actor in somebody else's movie, it may not have been able, like, honestly, I'm just being real, because we made the movie and I'm in it. We were able to make it better than it would have been otherwise. Like if we had just hired an actor because we really were able to just run down in my basement, re-record a line, pop it in, see if it worked, or bust out, like just buzz down to the house, reshoot something with just a handful of people and just try it again and again and again. And so I think through that process, it was able to seem like I did a better job than I did on set when we were there.
He's also very good. He's also very good.
So whose idea was to draw that hand on that little thing that was in the closet?
I don't remember.
Paper?
The Hamza, I think, was my idea.
Yeah, it was her idea.
You didn't know what a Hamza was, right?
You didn't know the name Hamza?
I didn't know either until I watched this movie. And I was like, oh, okay. You learn something. You always learn something with these horror movies. So whose idea was the things, stupid things to do? I just thought
that was my genius idea. I take credit.
That should be an actual board game. No, for real. It's called Deadstream, and then you do that, and you do all these things.
Also, it could come in the backpack with all the little EVPs and like Ouija board and stuff. That'd be fun. I'd play that.
Yeah, we can make some money off of it. Yeah, let's do it.
Nobody stole our idea. Well, their idea. They're
pop up on Etsy now in just a couple hours.
You have to name your percentage.
You never know. I mean, I would play it. So the parts where we see just you, Joseph, I'm assuming that would be Vanessa directing those parts, right?
Yes. Like I was doing all the technical directing on set, but part of our co-directing process is planning it out ahead of time, like we've talked about. So we did rehearsals where we filmed most of the shots and then we cut them together and we watched them together and made decisions on dialogue and how long a scene should be, or kind of roughly like what the scare or the timing should be like. So a lot of it, once we're on set, is just trying to execute the vision that we've already come up with. So there were times on set where we're definitely very divided, where he was very focused on acting and I was just helping the crew and everybody get through the shot list. And then occasionally when decisions had to come up, we might do a shot, watch it together and discuss, like, are we getting what we want? Or if we had different ideas about this, how do we combine them or choose one? So that's kind of how the process works. But yeah, he was doing a lot of directing, I guess, in pre-production.
Yeah, and then on set though, for me, like when I was in Sean's head and I was trying to get into character, I would switch over to primarily the dialogue and just making sure that it sounded real. And then Vanessa was executing the vision. But of course, when you show up, it doesn't go according to plan ever. So there's always things that we would have to conference about. But otherwise, the default position was that you could go to Vanessa for an answer.
Oh, okay. The comedy elements of this, it was just timed perfectly. Like some parts you're like, I was like, oh, that got me. And then you throw in the punchline in between to like ease it, but then you're like, okay, nothing's gonna happen, and then something happens, you just got all tensed up. But some of the comedy, like I even wrote down this one thing you said that it tickled me so much when you were under the bed and you was like going through some stuff and you found the clown. And the one thing you said, should you be offended, or should I be offended if the clown is white-faced? And I was just like, wait, what? Like I just thought that was just, I don't know, it was so unexpected to be said, but it tickled me for a while as I was watching. I was like, okay, I could see where this is going to go. And some of the scary elements, like, did you have other actors or any of that with special effects? Because with the face, the kid with the chest thing, I was like, holy, wait, what? I was like, that was so, like, how did that work out, the special effects? I mean, it was really good.
Thank you.
Oh man, that like we partnered with a creature designer named Troy Larson and our makeup effects artist Michaela Kester. They just like love horror. They're horror nerds. We're into the same kind of 80s special effects. Troy brings a lot of personality to his monsters, which fit our movie perfectly. Just like we had crazy ideas, and then he would make them even crazier. And I think that conjoined twin that you're talking about was his idea. Like, yeah, I can't remember how that first got thrown around, but like he like landed this perfect blend, I think at least, of like bizarre and really gross, but also kind of fun at the same time. And so anyway, I'm giving credit mostly to them, but you could add.
I just wanted to say, like, when you're talking about other actors involved, like the boy Jackson is a friend of ours, a son of a friend of ours who just so happens to like horror. But that day we did almost all of the monster stuff at once. We shot the ending where you see all the monsters again. This was all on a night that we called Monster Day, I think, and it was just chaos. There were so many. It was like the key makeup people that was just doing things themselves had brought in people to help them with all of these effects, and that was just a monstrous day where we were just like moving from thing to thing, trying to make things work and trying to chop off my finger with actual practical effects, and it was wild. And we pulled it off because of all the hard work and planning of the effects and makeup team and all of the people that were in our lives that were willing to come for free basically and just like go through this with us and let us splatter them with goo. And it was that made it successful for us.
Also, the actors were really good. The bathtub corpse was played by Ari Allen, who's a stunt woman, and she's just hilarious and awesome. Oh, Ari Lee, yeah. And Jason Wixom is Corner Man.
He's
and
great.
He was super great.
There was one scene where you were like behind the couch and you just saw someone just walk past the door, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I'm not even in there. Like I was, I mean, it was so frightening.
Yeah, that's Jason Wixom, the place Corner Man that Vanessa just mentioned. He's really good at that kind of thing, just being like a creepy presence with his body and like walking in certain ways that are really unsettling. So that's why we like to go to him for all of our, like, he's usually the first person we call for monster stuff.
I'm also with you. There's no way I would stay in a house by myself overnight.
Were you guys ever there, just the two of you by yourself in that house?
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time there. Our producing partner, Jared Cook, who was also the DP on this, he spent a ton of time by himself in the house in the middle of the night because he was also the security guard. Like he had all the monitor alert stuff coming to his house that he had set it all up himself. And he'd have to drive out there in the middle of the night when people would break in, and he'd have to go out there and like repair things or meet the police there. And so he had more than enough time there by himself. Like he got to the point where if he looked at a picture of the house, he'd start to smell the house. He was having like some PTSD reaction to it. It was pretty brutal for him.
Wow. Okay. So each of the scenes did since you guys were both writing on it, was one scene like your signature scene, even though you were both writing together, like as he was walking, the legs dangling from the roof and it goes up, was that like Vanessa your idea, or let's put that in there, or Joseph, was that yours, like, or would you guys collaborate the entire thing, or?
The things we track the most are probably jokes, like more than whose scene somebody came up with. It's mostly like we'll watch it with an audience. So in live audiences, we're usually nudging each other if one of our jokes that the other person didn't like gets a laugh. So I'd say like that more than scenes.
Yeah, I think the Corner Man, the part that you're talking about, was my idea because there was already a hole in the ceiling. And as a producer, I can't let stuff like that go. I'm like, if there's a hole in the ceiling, we have to use it. Like something creepy has to happen with this hole in the ceiling. But that's a really good question. Do you feel like there's a scene that's like yours?
Well, if you're going to claim hole in the ceiling scene, I will claim secret room in the cellar as being mine then, if we're going to take claim over things. No, for real. I wanted a secret room really bad. We had cut it out of the script. We went to this house. There was an actual secret cellar in a closet. We wrote it back in.
Oh, wow. Woo. Scary. Was there anything that you guys captured while you were filming that wasn't part of you guys' script or anything? It was like a real presence that have made entered on there?
I wish
Or is
that would have
hush hush?
happened. There
Oh,
was like the coolest thing that happened to us, like, because I've always wanted to have a ghost experience. I'm not very paranormally sensitive. But we were re-watching some like old footage, and there was this weird voice where I was like, whose voice is that? Like in the middle of a take, and it didn't sound like my voice, didn't sound like anybody on the crew. And I think that's the creepiest thing. Where it's not in the movie, but it's like
it was in a take.
It was in a take.
It didn't end up in the film, but it's like in the background. I'm doing something, and you can hear a woman's voice talking, but there's no explanation for it because there was no.
It's like I don't know
woman
who would have been
that.
talking like by the mic. I mean, of course, it could have.
It's
happened,
really
but I
weird.
like to think it's a ghost.
well, I have to say, this film was a lot of fun. I mean, Deadstream was, you saw so much in the film. I mean, you saw Evil Dead, especially when biting the crotch. I mean, in Evil Dead, it was nobody biting the crotch, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you could just
Totally
tell by what's, you could just, you just get it. And Blair Witch, the found footage. I mean, it was just like I was in tears. I was like, oh my God, they know horror. Like they write good stuff. And thank you. I have to say
Thank you. Thank you. That makes me so happy it worked for you.
Thank you.
I love when the people love horror, like our movie works for them. Makes me really happy.
I said thank you so much. And if you guys want more videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment. Thank you so much for this opportunity. You guys are amazing. I can't wait to see more stuff. I know that you guys even did a segment on VHS 99 as well. So congratulations on that